guys, welcome to Flow State, a reliable source of information. Please check out some of the merchandise links down below and get yourself something super awesome and fancy via my recommendations. Thanks.
Why men great till they gotta be great? Woo! I just took a DNA test, turns out I'm 100% that bitch. Even when I'm crying crazy, yeah, I got boy problems, that's the human in me. Bling, bling.
Okay, in MBTI, Enneagram 1, Riso and Hudson, I believe it was them, did correlations to cognitive functions to Enneagram types. And 1 is correlated to TE, because what type 1s do is we reject our personal feelings and sentiments to do what we think is the better, more correct thing to do, like what's objectively correct. So that would be TE over FI. That would be valuing both of those things, but choosing the TE over the FI.
When you say objectively correct, are you talking about objective in like the Jungian sense of the word, or like objective what you think is right? You're prioritizing rightness over your own feelings.
Removed from the self, yeah.
Okay, so then I think that applies to both of them. They just are using different reference points for right.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, like, 1 was correlated with extroverted thinking. Now, again, I don't really believe they should be correlated at all, because I don't think they're describing remotely the same thing. And I think when people hear that, they hear, oh, this correlates with this, they expect the person to have to value both, right? Which
are correlate. I mean, they do correlate.
You're fucking fiddle faddling with shit, Paul.
They do correlate, but it's not causal.
Exactly, and people get that misconception, right? You hear the word correlation, and then people are like, okay, so these types that value this function, they're more likely to be X type, or you have to be X type if you value X function.
I mean, yeah, I mean, people abuse shit like that all the time.
I try to stay away from that. I'm like, don't mix the systems, because we're over here, we're talking about, core motivations, core fears, core desires, and the kind of unconscious defense mechanisms that arise from those type of things. And then you're over here talking about how you process and judge information. Now, of course, there's going to be, it's like a Venn diagram. There's going to be slight overlap with stuff like that, but it's not describing the same thing.
No, but it's referencing similar. I mean, no. Do you think that there's a single SLE type 2?
No, but I know an LSE core 2.
Right. What?
No, see, I'm not. Okay, let me take back what I said. I do think that exists. For example, I could easily conceptualize. I could never conceptualize like a SPSO SLE2.
How can you conceptualize type 2 that is externally motivated heart type and is bipolar?
What about sexual 2?
I'm not familiar enough with the distinction.
So, okay, I'll bring up Megan, because she's a sexual 2. They can look more aided. I mean, they're like the classic 2. Like, you should never think that a SX2 is anything else. But I think people read old Enneagram books, and if you read the old Enneagram literature, a lot of type 2 descriptions sound very 9-ish, because I think a lot of people were looking at mistypes or looking at certain people, or maybe they weren't familiar with tri-type. The person had a 9 fix, and you'll read things like you think it's these soft people-pleasing people, but look at all the 2s. 2s are aggressive. They're not like a docile type. Like, I could easily conceptualize like
they're
a female
aggressive,
SL.
but it's in a weird, like, escalating passive way, right? It's like they'll ratchet up the passive aggression until you form, but the minute it goes into overt aggression, like, that's
no, I disagree with that.
Okay, maybe. Well, then correct me on that, because
I don't think I could call a 2 passive aggressive. Now, 2s are less overt with their desires, because they feel like they're not allowed to have needs, and they're always taking care of other people's needs, right? But I wouldn't say that that's passive aggressive, because the thing with a 2 is like they get very aggressive, especially if you're not, let's say a 2 is doing a lot for you and then they don't feel appreciated, or you're not doing something back for them. And I'm talking about stress 2 at this point, not an average 2 or a 2 that's in a good spot at the moment. 2s are fucking aggressive. Like, and that's a big misconception that like I wrote.
I mean, anybody who social contracts as a way of existence, social contractors, divorced from Enneagram, people who do that shit are aggressive once they snap, like out of, once all that non-aggression and appeasement snaps.
But I wouldn't say, like, if I look at a core 2, I would not call them passive aggressive people. And again, I'll use like Megan as an example. Megan's not passive aggressive. Like, she's very straightforward.
She's resistant. Okay, she's resistant. She's it's a defender position though. It's not offensive. She's aggressive, but only in a defensive position.
See, and now I don't like agree with that necessarily either, because I'm sure like, we're not having conflicts in interpersonal relations with her, but I'm willing to bet, just because she's a 2, that, if somebody is very, very close with her and they're not, I think probably it's hard for like a 2 to assert their needs, but I don't think that they go about it in the same way like a 9, like they numb out of it and they don't want to say anything. They do want to say something and they will. They just feel bad about having the needs, but they don't necessarily have the style. It's not a withdrawn style. It's a compliant type, right? And then again, it depends what wing you stick on it. I think like a 2-wing 1 is more likely to be more repressed and less overt with it. A 2-wing 3 is more able to ask for what they want. They have the assertive wing, helping that 2 out.
The 1 wing enforces the
superego message.
Which, okay, yeah, I don't deserve this. It enforces the I don't deserve this, not the resting bitch voice thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know what kind of 2s like you're thinking of or how many you know.
I don't know either now. Like this, you're sort of scrambling. Of course, I never really dug into Enneagram that much. I thought it was stupid for like the first 2 years, because if you Google Enneagram, all you get is like Christian fucking fluffy dumbass websites.
That's not nice.
It's stupid. Yeah, it is. I mean, but it's real. And I thought Enneagram was just stupid as fuck until, I don't know, at some point I realized it wasn't. And then at some point I read Naranjo's type 8 description. I was like, oh my God.
Well, and it depends who you read, right? Because first of all, I think most people discover Riso and Hudson first. And while Riso and Hudson are brilliant, and I'm not saying anything bad against them at all, I'm not the biggest fan of their descriptions, because I think that a lot of the descriptions, while I'm not calling them inaccurate, because they're absolutely not, but they're describing like one specific type of that type. So you could have found a description that's really describing like a very SP8, or it's like, maybe it's modeled after more SPSOs and you're SXSO. Like, that's so different from who you are, right? It's going to be difficult to resonate with an 8 that's kind of pointing all of their defense mechanisms in that instinctual arena. And
go ahead. Finish.
I was just going to say, it took me, God, I think a year to figure out that I was a 1. I typed as a 2 at first because I like to help people, and but it didn't feel right. And it's because all the 1 descriptions are describing like very, I guess, like MBTI SJ-ish people, which makes sense because there's more and I'm talking in frames of MBTI, not Socionics. There's more SJs in the world, so you have like a huge sample size for that. You don't have the sample size of NJ ones, right? Not as much.
Right.
And it took me, I had to really like TI break the system down to understand that, okay, like these are the type of defense mechanisms I use, even though I don't necessarily fit the classic description of like a super cold, rigid, repressed person. I'm expressive and it's not so much. Okay.
I was just going to identify with that because I related to it was the description of lust that Naranjo did that I related to like more than anything, way more than at first I thought I was a 7. I thought I was a 7-8-3 because 8-7-3 sounded too asshole-ish, and I'm not that asshole-ish, but.
Well, your tri-type is more asshole-ish than the 3-7-8.
The more I learn about this sort of shit, the more I realize like, I'm more asshole-ish than I thought I was.
And I don't mean that your tri-type actually is more of an asshole, but you're, the 3-6-8 archetype, the justice fighter, is more rugged, and the 3-7-8 has, more of a fluidity and a finesse to it, because they have that 7, they have that positive outlook. 7s can kind of go into a space, charming, fluid, happy, and yes, you have the 7 wing, but the 3-6-8 is definitely more rugged and pushy.
And 6 is a more pessimistic.
Yeah, than a 7. Yeah, well, 7s are it's always optimism, right? A lot of people miss how a 7 really feels because there's so much positivity and optimism.
I think 7 is a type that sort of jumps out to me as like, oh, when I see somebody acting really 7, it's just like, oh God, you are running. You are running from stuff.
I love being a 1 because I get like the 7 and like the bad parts of the 7 and the bad parts of the 4 when I'm in a bad place. So I'm like a selfish, moody, self-indulgent bitch, and I just lose it. You get both.
What do I disintegrate to? I disintegrate to 5.
I like to use the words like stress point and growth point more because I think people think, okay, I'm stressed out, I'm disintegrating, so here, like, I'm going to turn into a 5, but you get the bad parts of a 2 and a 5, depending on what's going on. Like, you're going to reach into both sides. Like, the Enneagram's a connected graph, right? Mm-hmm. We're always kind of moving along those lines. It's dynamic. We're not sitting at one spot. So let's say you get really stressed, you can adopt unhealthy qualities of like a 2 or a 5, or both at the same time. It's not really, okay, like I'm acting like a 5, I'm stressed right now. And you can be in a good spot and you're going to take those 5 qualities, and it's like, everything's going to go up with you, right? So you're going to have good qualities of the 5 as well. And I think it's like, I believe Naranjo had initially talked about integration and disintegration, and he was misquoted, and he later corrected. And he didn't mean to say, or he didn't say, it was misremembered that people just go up and down to another type. Like, that's not how it works, right?
Yeah, explain that, because I remember I read something about that the other day. But then
I made a big tweet about it.
Oh, maybe that's what I read.
Let me see if I can find it real quick, because that way I don't have to reiterate all of it. Oh, it's in my master thread. Hold on. I'm gonna find this. Sorry.
You're good. I'm texting to see if there's food ready.
Okay, so I'll just read out what I wrote. Excuse me. Because I had a lot of people actually ask me about this. So I said, I've had lots of questions about this recently, and I just wanted to mention that disintegration and integration does not mean that you go up or down to a type and away from another. When you're healthy, you will adopt positive qualities of both of your lines and operate at a better level overall. For example, if you are a 4, you will take on both healthy 1 and healthy 2 qualities, as you always have access to these lines. When you are operating in a state of stress or are not at your best, you will take on less ideal qualities of both of your lines of movement as well. The line up to integration shows more of what we need to get rid of the too much from our type, because we all have the vices or the fixations from our type, and what we would benefit from in healthy qualities the most to offset our defense mechanisms. Disintegration/integration, as people spread it, was suggested ages ago by Naranjo, I believe, who later took it back/retracted it. It has also been debunked since by nearly every Ennea leader and expert in favor of the thought that we adapt good or non-ideal qualities from both lines in times of growth or stress. As a source/history, the only misinformation was the teaching that we move to the lines of connection and integration and disintegration, or stress and security. The side note here is that Naranjo stated in 1996 that he was misquoted when teaching his hypothesis on the arrows in an early Seekers After Truth group in the 1970s. This misquote went around the world. He corrected it in his first Enneagram intensive in Boulder, Colorado in 1996, stating he never meant to suggest that you move to one line positively and the other negatively, but rather you move to both lines of connection all the time. And David Favre, I probably butchered his last name. I don't know how to say it.
Well, that's like a huge misinterpretation that's flavored the fuck out of Enneagram since then and is doing weirdo things to people.
Yes. So when someone says integrates, not mean that they only take on the qualities of that line or that it's unhealthy to show qualities of your stress line. We are referring to offsetting your defenses by looking to the type we'd most benefit from. And I'm not going to keep reading that because I think the point.
Yeah, your tweet was what I read.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're showing 5 qualities, but you're showing healthy 5, is that supposed to mean you're disintegrated? That doesn't make any sense. I like to look at that figure, the Enneagram figure, right? It's all connected. We have access to all these points all the time. We just have fixations on certain ones. And I think it's important to realize that you're accessing all the stuff. You're accessing that 7 wing, you're accessing that 2, you're accessing that 5. You have fixations from these centers in your tri-type, but that doesn't mean that you're this type, this type, this type, and you're just stuck there like on a graph.
Right.
This is a dynamic tool.
Which is what makes it awesome, and also just inevitably is going to be fucked up and oversimplified. Okay. Fuck! I just had the question.
I'm sorry. I talk for.
Okay, no, I got it back. Stop. Okay.